Hello and welcome. Moving straight on with the comments today. The first question is, how do you stop your legs from going dead after 30 minutes in sitting meditation lotus position? So half lotus position is as I've just positioned myself, with your right foot on your left thigh. Your right foot should be just in front of your right thigh, behind your right calf. Now there is a video already here on this channel you can go to, how to sit. I don't know what the title is, whether it's how to sit properly, but there are a few, and some might be titled how to sit for a long time in meditation. So there I demonstrate how one should sit properly. Now, as long as you're sitting comfortably in order that you don't have to move throughout your meditation time, that's good enough. This could even involve a chair, but you should be sitting upright and erect. Now, the best way to be able to meditate is sitting in half lotus or full lotus on the floor, because by that means you can meditate anywhere, can't you? Anytime, any place, anywhere. How do you stop your legs from going dead? Well, you sit correctly in the first place so that no nerves are trapped or blood flow is restricted. I don't know which is which, and I'm not a doctor. I stand to be corrected, but it is true, yes, even sometimes when I sit for these talks, at the end maybe I'm a little numb in my left leg or my right leg, because I haven't paid close enough attention to how I position myself in the first instance. But during meditation, it shouldn't be that you are sat so uncomfortably that it interrupts you. Allow time when you first sit to adjust your posture accordingly. And most people, if they are not used to sitting in the half lotus position, would find that quite difficult. So they begin with just their right foot on the floor in front of their left shin. And that's good enough. And then you move from that, that's called the Burmese position, posture. You move from that to putting your right foot on your left thigh when it feels comfortable to do so. This actually comes naturally. You just progress towards that sitting posture without really even thinking about it. If you're thinking about it, it's because it's uncomfortable. So just give yourself some time. Now for this talk, I'll be sitting here for a bit longer than 30 minutes and hopefully won't have any dead legs, pins and needles or numbness. We'll see. But that's usually the case because I'm used to it. It's training, it's practice, like all of these things. So quite a commonly asked question, one to warm up with. I think perhaps it's better really to begin with more exciting questions than ones that people have heard a lot of times. Nothing wrong with that question, but of course people might have switched off by now, which means that we're just amidst good company, those dedicated listeners. I would like to ask, what is the distinction between jhana and bojjhanga? Well, jhana is deep, absorbed states of meditation, whereas bojjhanga are the 7 factors of enlightenment, or enlightenment factors, of which there are 7, and included amongst them is samadhi. So the ability, one of the factors of enlightenment, is the ability to have clear, focused attention, concentration on a meditation object. And that allows, with time, for you to become fully absorbed, secluded from physical feelings, mental thought, secluded from the hindrances, 5 hindrances to meditation, absorbed in the first stage or the first jhana. So jhana is quite a distinctly different word and meaning to the word Bojjhanga. The 7 factors of enlightenment, if I've got them here just to remind myself, because I might forget them otherwise, are, so mindfulness, sati, is the first. Investigation, vichaya, so the ability to investigate impartially, without judgment, your experience, all experience. That is experienced by the physical body, the thinking brain, through sense contact, sense consciousness, through sense contact. All that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think about is experience, producing sankhara, mental formations, as a result of feelings. So the 5 khandhas I've spoken of so often, forming nama and rupa. Investigative powers of these experiences is vichara, as opposed to just assuming and being judgmental with liking and disliking, aversion and desire, going to something, running away from something because of sankhara, but impartially, observationally, set back as a witness to see, yes, this is what it really is. It's just that. It's just Pepsi Cola. This is just water, which will do the same job. All the wanting of Pepsi Cola is as a result of bodily feelings, attachment, desire, as opposed to the thirst, which is need for just plain water. So that's vichaya. The third being happiness, piti, as an enlightenment factor, something we're striving, all of us, towards, is happiness, isn't it? So that's one of the enlightenment factors. Passaddhi, which is tranquility, being the fifth there. And concentration, samadhi, I've already spoken about. And then finally, but really most importantly, is upekkha, equanimity, which I speak about all of the time in relation to the 4 Brahma Viharas, but standing out very much on its own as a important factor of enlightenment, but a quality we develop through this practice. Equanimity is not caring, but it's reacting accordingly and sensibly, a little bit incorporating those powers of vichara, investigative nature, impartially, to react accordingly rather than through preference. So there we go, quite distinct differences there. In my workplace, so this is the next comment, next question. In my workplace, idle speech is constant. I often remain silent, and this seems to cause discomfort or dislike from others. Is this simply clinging to perception? Is this simply clinging to perception? It's a true perception, yes. If you remain silent inappropriately, it's not clinging to perception. You will perceive, you will experience, you will see, it will make people uncomfortable. And this isn't what we're doing by practicing noble silence. It is perfectly acceptable and in fact encouraged by the Buddha to make not idle chit-chat all of the time, but certainly if you are arriving at a temple, a monastery as a monk, or you're receiving guests as a monk in your temple or monastery, you're encouraged to firstly greet the visitors, ask them to sit down, and if there's anything they immediately need, something to drink, the washroom facilities, whatever, but also inquire as to their journey, the weather, their health, and do they need anything else, any requisites that they might need whilst they're staying with you. Making what we call polite conversation, and that's an important part of mingling with society. So we don't walk around ignoring everybody in silence. In fact, silence is not noble silence. Noble silence is just speaking appropriately. And we have 5 things to determine this, a checklist, if you like. And if I can remember them, one should speak at the appropriate time. one should speak so one should speak, these might not be, it doesn't matter which order I suppose, truthfully, one should speak kindly, one should speak only of things that are useful and appropriate, and one should speak from a point of view of your own actions and experience. So practice what you preach, in other words. These are the sort of 5 denominators determining what we call in the Noble Eightfold Path as right speech. So truthfully comes into that, but as you notice in the 5 precepts, the 4th precept is to refrain from lying. So it doesn't say refrain from gossip, idle chit-chat. It doesn't say refrain from speaking loudly or too quietly or harshly or even cruelly. It's really referring specifically in the precepts to lying, whereas the Noble Eightfold Path, it's encompassing all of those aspects of what we would consider wrong speech as opposed to right speech. Now, as far as you're concerned, you're at work, so I think it's perfectly acceptable to, you don't have to join in with all of the conversation, but you can acknowledge the conversation. And where invited to do so for opinion, you can contribute. Don't feel that you're breaking any precepts or not living in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path by being polite. Making a point, sometimes people might, by being especially silent, just is considered ignorant, is just considered rudeness by many. So one should avoid doing that. It can also hurt people's feelings if suddenly you become quiet, whereas you used to speak a lot. They may feel that they've done something wrong, and this is your way of punishing them. So you must be careful, because the 3rd step on the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech, encompasses all of this nature of speech and avoiding harmful speech or lack of speech, because sometimes it's appropriate to say something, sometimes it's not, but you can do as much harm in the absence of saying something sometimes as you can by saying something unnecessarily. So the idle speech that's consistent and going on in your workplace is always going to be the way it is. You don't have to get deeply involved, but you don't have to let it bother you either. Like all of these things in our workplace, in our family life, in our social environment, we allow them with equanimity to be there, be present, but without judgment. Just don't let them affect us. And it's the practice that enables us to achieve that state. Chanting before meditation, I really don't know what will be proper to chant. And then you give some examples. Actually, it doesn't matter. Whatever makes you feel good. You can chant anything. The point of chanting, if you're going to chant just before your meditation, my morning puja, live 6 a.m. morning puja, is a structured thing. I do that for consistency, and it's also part of my practice. So I chant reflections on the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha after initial homage, Namo Tassa, which you mention here. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa, which we chant 3 times, is a good way to begin. And then maybe chant the Itipiso, reflections on the qualities, the 9 qualities of the Buddha, the reflections on the Dharma, and the reflections on the Sangha, as an introduction to your chanting, if you're going to chant anything else, but that should be enough. Your meditation time is for that, it's for meditation. But if it helps to chant something prior to it to help calm the mind, then it's a very wholesome activity to do that. So yes, do so, but what you chant doesn't matter. So pick something that's the right length from the chanting book, but most importantly, understand what it means, but don't let it then occupy your thoughts throughout the meditation, because your meditation should be focusing on the meditation object and allowing the mind to settle and not be analysing a reflection or a thought for consideration, something for a subject for consideration. So please just chant something that's regularly chanted, like Namo Tassa followed by Iti Piso, and that's usually enough to just help calm and settle the mind. Yes, so nothing's right, nothing's wrong, nothing's proper, nothing's improper in that respect. Do you use incense during all of your meditation sessions? Well, not necessarily. I don't use anything for meditation other than some time. I try not to be dependent on anything external, because meditation should be something we can do, as I've just already said, anywhere, anytime, any place. And incense, candles, peace and quiet may not always be available, but you are available. If you have some time, you can meditate. However, saying that, there are usually incense burning here, where I live and wherever I've lived. It's the nature of being a Buddhist monk. People offer incense, we have an abundance of them, and it keeps a nice atmosphere. Smoke is, despite its negative connotations, smoke is very antiseptic and cleansing in certain environments, so useful from that point of view. May not be that healthy in some people's views and consideration, but the alternative is less healthy. For instance, mold and mildew and spores in the air, which is all counteracted by smoke. So I'm often burning insects. You see smoke here around me now. For that reason, it helps clean the air. It helps also keep the mosquito at bay. So it's not a necessary part of meditation, but there are usually incense burning whilst I meditate. And this is just pure coincidence. I noticed that the next question says, my understanding of rebirth is like that of an incense stick. Well, and then you say, is my understanding of rebirth correct? You do go on to explain why, because it's lit, which is like a karmic action, and then it goes out and nothing. It's not that complicated, rebirth. Nothing continues from this life by way of those 5 khandhas. All that is reborn and attached to a new bunch, a new vehicle, a new bunch of 5 khandhas, is the mind, the citta. So try and keep it simple, your understanding of rebirth. It's not really that, you can't really easily equate rebirth to an inanimate object such as an incense stick. It's more simple to just equate or understand it for what it is. If you're not freed from your attachments to existence, having not seen clearly the nature of existence, its impermanence, its suffering, and its intrinsic lack of self, then you will be reborn. Your citta will become attached again to future births as a result of causes and conditions, karma, that is, you've put in place. And that's all there is to understand. Think of it like the driver of a vehicle. When that car gets old, rusty and falls to bits, he jumps out of it because he likes cars and gets into a new one, drives off and carries on. That's the way it is. But if you accept that you really no longer need this vehicle, you're not going anywhere, you're driving round and round in circles, or more pertinently, you're driving back and forth up the busy dual carriageway each day to work the treadmill of life, grinding the grindstone, earning the money to pay the bills, to support the life you have, in order that you can then go to work to continue this cycle of frustration, living on this hamster wheel, when you can just step off, not replace the vehicle, not replace the car, and therefore be free from this cycle of rebirth. Okay. Is it appropriate to release anapanasati and remain without object of support? So, anapanasati, just to remind those that don't know, is mindfulness of the breath, more often referred to as a method of meditation using breathing, the in and out breath, as the meditation object. A wonderful anchor to focus the concentration, the conscious awareness on in order to bring yourself into the present moment, here and now, and within the body, because it's a bodily action, breathing. Now, there is objectless meditation, often also referred to as open awareness meditation. However, whilst this is a very wonderful and enjoyable practice, and certainly after Anapanasati, in my experience, what we're really moving towards in our meditation, it is also very difficult, even for the most accomplished meditator, the most practiced meditator. Anapanasati is often lost without a meditation object. It means you simply have no meditation object and are able to remain completely focused on nothing in particular other than that what arises and what passes away, all phenomena, all experience, but without attachment and with total impartiality. Now that's quite difficult to do, not to have something occur, a physical feeling or a mental thought, that you then link to something, another. A thought leads to another thought, or a feeling reminds you of something, leading to thinking about that feeling, identifying the need to move or find another feeling. It's connectivity through partiality, through judgment. Until we've been able through Anapanasati or a similar meditation object to attain to deep levels of samadhi and even jhana, it isn't appropriate to try and practice open awareness meditation or objectless meditation, because you'll just find yourself sitting there thinking about stuff, sitting there feeling stuff, and thinking you're very openly aware and without judgment, but not really, because in the back of your mind there is partiality there towards what you're experiencing, and attachment to what you're experiencing if it's really nice and relaxing and super duper. But if it's uncomfortable and difficult and not so pleasant, aversity to it, you might not want to do it again. You might want to stop your meditation. Observation of a meditation object, something like the breath, keeps you sheltered from that, secluded from that, protected from that, and helps you naturally go into deep stages of absorption where the meditation object will naturally become subtle and eventually disappear anyway, where there is no object of meditation. But this is jhana, when you go into jhana. So you can get into absorbed states of meditation, the jhanas, without having to be experienced enough to practice open awareness or objectless meditation. So it is better for most people that they concentrate on developing samadhi through something like Anapanasati, which will lead to jhana anyway. If you can enjoy objectless meditation, if you can do that, then do that. It's really the way to meditate. Now, I like that meditation myself, and living in a very supportive environment for meditation, I find I'm able to do that more than anything else. But if I was in a less supportive environment, say visiting, traveling, I would probably revert to Anapanasati as my anchor, my meditation object, in order to really get into a nice relaxed state of calm and samatha, which will lead eventually to samadhi. I get so tired of endlessly studying suttas. I feel like I want to completely give up study, take refuge in the Triple Gem, and just practice samasati. Can I still call myself a Buddhist with this view? A Buddhist is just a word. We call Buddhists people, generally speaking, whom are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. And in the Noble Eightfold Path, it doesn't say you should be reading anything or suttas. says wisdom should be developed in terms of right view. So we come to establish right view by two means: intellectually, reading, understanding, and then putting it into practice. Or you can just put it into practice and experience. So yes, if you're fed up, why are you studying so hard? Don't worry about it, unless it's required of you. It might be you're in a country whereby you can't ordain until you've learnt off by heart certain sutras or something like this. That's fair enough, but that doesn't take so long. But you don't need to be studying the entire Pali Canon, or the Sutta Pitaka even, because you've got a core understanding of Buddhism and you are a Buddhist. So you don't need to be studying the sutras to be called a Buddhist. This is just terminology. You want to give up study and take refuge in the Triple Gem. You should be, and you can be doing that anyway, and in conjunction with a little study, but you don't need to be studying, especially endlessly. And you're not practicing just samasati. This is just one aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path has to be practiced holistically to establish right view. And that means you are practicing right view, right intention, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, samasati, right samadhi, samasamadhi, and that's all of them, isn't it? Yes, so you practice the Noble Eightfold Path holistically. Now that's enough. That through that practice, sitting and practicing meditation, you're entering into another realm of study. You're studying the physical body and its feelings, and the thinking brain and its thoughts. You're coming to understand how that's all working. Now, what the sutras are doing in a very concise and wonderful way, but in a very long and drawn out way, in many different forms and formats, are in written form, explaining all of that, how the body and the mind is working. And you can do with the summarizations of that contained in the chanting books, or even the Dhammapada verses, as long as you understand they are just summaries and not necessarily absolutely word for word accurate. But then neither are the sutras necessarily word for word accurate, having been written down sometime later than they were spoken, but good enough when combined all together to give us a really true understanding of the core teachings, being Dharma, of the Buddha, our teacher. This is Buddhism. That's what makes you a Buddhist. So that's what you can be doing. So just put the books down for a while, have a rest. It doesn't mean you don't go back to them again later. You may want to. Many people just use study as a distraction or as a crutch, a way to avoid practice, because practice, doing nothing, is very difficult for most people. And reading suttas, learning suttas, is difficult, but some people find that less difficult than trying to meditate for several hours a day, and find it a skillful, wholesome activity, which it is, and therefore acceptable to replace their meditation time. But one could call that an excuse, couldn't one? Okay, why did you leave Thailand? Is Sri Lanka better or more suitable place for you? So I didn't leave Thailand. I began my Buddhist monastery experience and training in England and then Thailand for many years, living as a layperson, staying in various Buddhist monasteries. Then I ordained in India, actually, and ordained in India and lived in India in Buddhist monasteries and alone outside for 3 years. I then went to Thailand this is where you're getting this idea from the way the videos are structured, because it wasn't until a couple of years ago, so quite recently in the context of my own practice, that I've been recording these videos, talks. So whilst I was in Thailand for various reasons, visas, and also I was required to go back to my home monastery, my ordination monastery in India for a while, for the Rains retreat. I went back to India, and then I was going to return to Thailand after that 3 months. But I thought I'd visit Sri Lanka on the way, and it just so happens I've stayed here. So, because it is particularly supportive. So no particular place, country is necessarily better than another. It's what you do in that place that's important. It's, are you better there than somewhere else? If you're supported well, it is conducive to your practice, and I'm supported well here, so it's conducive to my practice. But the same can be said for Thailand and India. I have equally good support in all of those places. So there's no particular reason other than this is the easiest for me so far on the technical side with regards to travel and visas and such like, and the support structure is that which suits me. So there's no particular real reason. It's just the way. I don't plan these things. It's none of this that you see where I am 1 minute and then I'm in another place has ever been planned. It's just what's come about as a result of causes and conditions. Pachaya, causes and conditions. My own practice has resulted in me ending up here, and I'm very delighted that that is the case. As I said yesterday in yesterday's talk, it has its moments. Had a few difficult moments with the kittens and a dead rat just recently, having to clean up after the mess that was made. Been scrubbing floors, it seems, most of the night, so apologies if you missed morning puja. My absence was because I was scrubbing floors after a rather nasty experience with a dead rat and a rather enthusiastic kitten and said rat. So things one might not ordinarily experience in other places, that living alone I have to deal with myself, but actually are all good and wonderful training. I was remembering actually cleaning and scrubbing the floor this morning on an occasion staying in a beautiful monastery in Thailand where I did a lot of my practice and training as a layperson. One morning prior to Pindapata, going on alms round, a dog, one of the many dogs like you see here, again in yesterday's videos, had an extremely unfortunate diarrhea accident in the main sort of meeting hall, the morning chanting, morning sala meeting hall. And one of the monks asked me as a upasaka, as a lay person there, to get a mop and bucket and start clearing this very awful mess up. And I remember then, this was some years ago, being there, enjoying my meditation in this beautiful environment, thinking, oh, I'm not here to be clearing up all this dog S-H-I-T. I should be just peacefully doing some walking meditation and then helping with Pindapata and then enjoying my practice. And this is unrelated. And even so far I went, and I feel so terrible about this, as to kind of delegating the responsibility of most of this cleaning up to someone who'd arrived a little bit later than me. So was less experienced in monastic life. So I used a little bit of manipulation and subversiveness, and very, very wrongly so, gave a lot of the cleaning up responsibility to someone else, rather than enjoyably helping out and mucking in and cleaning up. As I came to learn after many years of living in such places and practice, that you come to see all these experiences as something you see as practice also. I spent my 50th birthday scrubbing toilets in a toilet blocks with frogs in the rainy season, with all frogs jumping around everywhere, and remember thinking, some of my peers at my age, reaching 50, are having champagne parties on yachts and are in the Mediterranean right now. And what am I doing? I'm scrubbing toilets, bitten by mosquitoes, and avoiding snakes and cockroaches and scorpions. Why am I doing this? But by then I'd learned why I was doing this. It was to develop humility, a kind of humbleness, not in a, oh, I'm so good because I'm humble kind of way, but in a way that allows you to let go of all that attachment we have to the nice things of life and embrace the unpleasantness, the dukkha, the suffering we are all all beings are experiencing. And by embracing that suffering that all beings are experiencing, we don't have aversity to it. We're able to act in accordance with it equanimously and even enjoy it. And I really enjoyed scraping up the rat's guts this morning and then scrubbing the floors into the toilet area to make the place all beautifully clean and sanitized again, ready for then, when I did come back from Pindapata later, for me to have food outside to share for others, and for me to come and sit on the same floor and then enjoy my meal without the fear of nastiness around me, or the danger of nastiness around me. But this seems like a sort of a mundane activity, a trivial activity, and nothing very high-minded. But I can assure you that is the most high-minded it gets. When you can scrape up diarrhea and rat's guts, and you can deal with the worms of the kittens and things effectively without aversion, but seeing it is just part of nature. Maybe quite horrific nature in some respects, but just real life. Like I also said yesterday, it's not all pink rose-tinted glasses, love and peace and chimes and incense. It's real life. You're experiencing real life in worldly things, but even here in this idyllic environment for my practice, I'm experiencing real life in nature, this semi-jungle environment. Huge monkeys when they land on the roof, and all of the other creatures. There are so many frogs, it's wet, it's damp at the moment with the rain, that come inside. I keep picking them up and putting them outside, but they seem to come back inside. The kittens play with them but don't harm them. I don't know how they distinguish, but they seem to never want to eat them or harm them. Whereas the little lizards that crawl up the wall, if they can catch them, which they usually fortunately can't, they munch up very quickly. The rats, doesn't matter how big they are, nearly as big as some of the smaller of the kittens, they have no problem with killing, unfortunately. This is why the animal realm is such a sad and unfortunate place to be. Now, I do my best, I keep them fed, so it's very rare that they're bringing dead creatures in, and it's now they never come in with live creatures and kill them. So I don't have that dilemma of getting involved and trying to save the victim. But if it's already dead, then they seem to just leave it alone, and sadly it's died unnecessarily. But it's been released from its suffering to some extent and served its purpose, paid back its karma, and hopefully we might think that rat has been born in a more fortunate realm, maybe even the human realm. Maybe it was only a temporary time in rat kingdom, which was why it was a relatively young rat that I was dealing with this morning. And now it's probably living its life as something else. Let's hope. But these things are real life, and that's what you're dealing with, is real life. Different things, different kinds of problems. But it's all experience that through the development of equanimity, we just deal with differently than if we're not Buddhist practitioners. If we're not Buddhist practitioners, if we're something else, we're either praying for something to come and miraculously sort everything out, we're ignoring everything, or we're fighting against it. There's all this aggression and fighting against things, I notice, coming through the comments at the moment, through other religions, because someone did say, why am I defending Buddhism? It wasn't by any meant, I wasn't by any means trying to defend Buddhism, which needs no defense. It's a very inert practice in that sense. It isn't contradictory. The Dharma doesn't contradict any other faiths, but asks us to look inwardly and investigate for ourselves through experience. So there's nothing to defend, but I try to reply to all comments. That being said, comments coming that are really not useful for me to answer, I'm going to have to stop replying to. There might come a time, if those comments become so many, and they're getting more and more, that I might have to switch off comments, because I know that people who have serious questions will email me. And rather than, oh, here we go, this dog's come back again. Rather than, I don't want to get into a dialogue, into conversation. That can be done amongst yourselves, in other media, in other forums, in other ways, in other groups. But whilst there's a select amount of Buddhist practitioners in discussion, that's okay. But none of us, as Buddhist practitioners, want to waste our time in useless speech, either explaining why we don't believe certain things, or justifying why we don't believe certain things. It's just the case that we don't think about certain things, that's all. There's no need to. We're not doing any harm by not thinking about those things, not relying on those things. And it's very hard to make people or get people to understand that's all we're doing. So I have to be very careful what I say, the more people that there are watching, and bearing in mind they come from all walks of life, with whom we're at peace, all of us together, with the same aim to live congenially in society, wherever we might be, doing good, or at least doing no harm, and practicing diligently in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. So I hope there's something useful in some of the things I've talked about today, coming from those comments, which I do appreciate when they're about Buddhism and its practice. And if there is, please use those things. If not, just let them go. It can be left there. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.